Okay, we are live. Welcome everyone to the Hill of Roses, where we come once again to celebrate our independent policy movement for progress to bring power to the people. You know, we have a really special event for you all today. We've done this several times in the past. We're having ourselves another candidate supporter debate. We have a lot of lovely guests here today, and before we get into the rules, we want to introduce them all. And so I'm going to go around the table and let everyone know who each person here is representing. Please let the folks out there know a little bit about yourself. Kennedy, want to let the folks know who you are as a person and why you've come on today to be able to support Howie Hawkins.
Sure, John. Thanks for having me. I'm Kennedy at Kennedy T. Cooper on Twitter. I'm one of the hosts of Not Safe for Wonks, which if you like politics, you should also check out our show sometime. And I also do a couple of other podcasts. I'm generally a political advocate for peace activism, for LGBT rights, for changing our agricultural system, and for some other issues. I've been an activist for a long time, although I would say my political views have changed a lot over time as well. And I'm just really excited to be here with everyone today.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Kennedy. Our next guest is Danny Anderson. Danny will be representing Joe Biden today. Danny, want to let the folks out there know a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I'm coming in from Richmond, Virginia. I'm a college student and a staffer for State Delegate Mark Levine. And I'm here for Joe Biden because I really think this election, as much as people might disagree with sort of the strength of his candidacy, I think that this election is a battle for the soul of our nation. And I think there's a lot at stake here. So I'm really excited to come on and have this talk with you guys.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Our next guest is Bethany. Bethany, want to let the folks out there know a little bit more about yourself?
Well, originally I'm from Ohio, and I moved to Chicago when I was 19 years old. Since then, I have ran a business and I've also been a realtor. Right at this moment, kind of with everything that's going on with the pandemic, it's kind of put a little of a slowdown on my business. The candidate that I am representing today is Mark Charles. I truly think he's someone we need right now and someone that represents foundational change. Not someone who's taking us back, but someone who's trying to move us forward.
Okay, well, Bethany, thank you so much. Our next guest is Dev Steve. Dev will be representing Donald Trump today. Dev Steve, want to let the people out there know a little bit more about yourself?
Peace, people. My name is Dev Steve. I'm from the Gulf Coast, Mobile, Alabama area. I am a father to 3 beautiful little girls. I'm a small business owner myself. I day trade. I hold long-term stock investments in crypto. So I'm kind of geeky a little bit. And I'm also a Trump supporter. I'm here to converse with people outside of my little bubble of biased opinions and hopefully show that America is still somewhat decent and cordial and we can converse with each other.
That's exactly why we love to do these things. It is about the exchanging of ideas, but it is also showing we can have a productive and civil conversation still, despite a variety of opinions. Okay, so our last guest today is Michael Madrid. He is representing the Libertarian Party and Joe Jorgensen today. Michael, want to let the folks out there know a little bit more about yourself?
Yes, hi, my name is Michael Madrid. I am a software developer with a lot of economic training. I am currently taking this year to run for U.S. Congress against Gerald Nadler here in New York City. And I am trying to, what I'd really like to see is a simpler, more manageable government, which only does things it actually can do to help people. And I am representing Joe Jorgensen because she believes in this. She would like to cut a lot of the government, which is really not helping and just wasting our resources rather than doing something productive.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that. So with the introductions out of the way, let's get into what the rules are for today's debate. So first and foremost, each round of answers and questions is going to be 90 seconds apiece, and we're going to give 2 rounds for each topic. Secondly, we're going to be asking our guests today to not interrupt each other. They may raise their hands if they would like to try and get in on the topic, and we will try to accommodate. Furthermore, we will be asking them to please take notes instead of trying to butt in with their words. Furthermore, we will be giving, whenever a candidate is mentioned, a rebuttal time of 30 seconds to that individual. And furthermore, we will be asking each other to try and keep this a civil debate. We are representing the candidates. Feel free to go hard against the other candidates if you so believe, but let's try and keep it where we're not attacking one another. With that being said, the topics for today's debate, after opening statements that we'll be giving each of these candidates and supporters today, we will be asking them to talk about the subjects of the economy, healthcare, our democracy, law enforcement, and then we'll be asking each of these individuals today some individual questions on their respective candidates, and then closing with some closing remarks. With that being said, let's get into today's debate. So first, with opening statements, we're going to go in the same order we did our introductions beforehand. Kennedy, the floor is yours. Why should the people be supporting Howie Hawkins?
All right, thank you. Yeah. So Howie Hawkins is a champion for the working class from the working class. Howie's a trade unionist, the original Green New Dealer, and a founding member of the Green Party. In an era where political trust is at an all-time low for many voters, a down-to-earth candidate like Howie is the antidote, in my opinion. Although it's fair to say that the Green Party is unlikely to win the election given historical trends, it's also worth noting that third parties can pull surprising numbers and that 2020 could be a great opportunity for the Green Party in particular to get the votes needed for nationwide ballot access. In addition, Howie Hawkins has proven he has a stronger united left pull than any Green Party candidate in recent history, with his simultaneous nominations with the Green Party, Socialist Party USA, and the endorsement of multiple DSA chapters. Howie Hawkins recognizes this opportunity and is bringing to meet it his incredible organizing skills, as well as a strong, coherent platform that would set a bold but relatable and realistic standard for the Green Party moving forward.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Kennedy. Danny, would you like to speak on why you believe Joe Biden is the best candidate this year?
Sure. Well, I think, I'm a fan of Howie Hawkins. I like the guy. But ultimately, the result of this election is going to be the most, if not one of the most, impactful elections of our lifetimes. And you look at this Joe Biden, he started his career as a public defender. And for any of you who know what it's like to be a public defender, I mean, you're talking about committing to 60 plus hours a week for the lowest pay a new lawyer can get. And, then he got elected to Congress. And he's been there for a very long time. Not a lot of people like that, but this is a guy who has seen an incredible amount of tragedy over the course of his life. He lost his wife and daughter in a car crash decades ago, and then more recently, he lost his son to cancer. This is a man who knows what it's like to feel loss. Yes, go ahead, John.
Oh, no, just as a reminder for everyone out there, that'll be the indication that we've hit 90 seconds. You may go over the time, but we would like everyone else to know how far people have gone over. But thank you for that answer, Danny. Let's go on to Bethany with Mark Charles.
So I think we all know deep down that we need real change right now. Our government has failed us on all levels in Congress. Trump, our president, Connell, even including the Democrats, they are not solving the problems we need them to. Right now, someone being not Trump is just not good enough. We need someone who's actually willing to tackle the changes we need. And we need that now, not 4 years from now. We need someone who has a vision, who represents foundational change, and someone who's tackling the pressing issues. We see in our communities, we see all these things in our communities, such as systemic racism, drug overdoses, suicides, trafficking, poverty, and disease. We need someone who's willing to address all of them one by one. Right now, I think, for me, I stand by Mark Charles, and Mark Charles, a Native American man, is addressing this. And then there is no doubt in my mind, he's exactly who we need to move our country forward.
Okay, thank you, Bethany. Dev Steve, can you please make the case of why you believe Donald Trump should be reelected?
Yes, sir. For one, I just want to start by saying I am in no way a Republican or in favor of the way the GOP is being ran. But I am a Trump supporter, and I do feel that as far as the way the two-party system is set up, I have to go with Trump over Biden. And as he said, years long of being in that position of being a politician, and Trump isn't, kind of hits home with certain people. Him being a businessman hits home with me personally. And if you just look at some of the things he did as far as opportunity zones, listening to Tim Scott, the senator who created it, prison reform, a lot of other things that kind of persuaded me, well, at least he's going to do something, even if it isn't the most pleasantly spoke about thing that he does. He's at least going to take initiative to do something. And he understands what the main Americans are trying to do and get across in day-to-day life. So that's my position.
Okay, thank you, Dev Steve. Michael, would you like to make the case for Joe Jorgensen? Michael, you are on mute currently.
Okay, there we go. You didn't have the, never mind. So I'm going to borrow that Bethany said, and that is that government is not solving the problems we have. Trust in government is at an all-time low. Well, maybe the reason government is not solving the problems that we know it needs to solve is because maybe it can't. We have entrusted government huge amounts of money, and that has just become huge deficits. It's become large and expensive foreign wars, a huge bloated military, a healthcare system, which, healthcare system, which is not market-based. It doesn't contain cost, and it doesn't help people. A retirement system, which we can't pay for, and all sorts of barriers, tariffs, occupational licensing, which just does not allow people to have the creativity to create the social wealth, which we know we can. We have some of the most talented people in the world. We have some of the most innovative companies in the world. Let's just get government out of the way and let these people and these companies create a better society for us.
Thank you, Michael, for that. So let's get into our first topic of the day. It's the economy. And as we all know, a lot of elections truly come down to the economy. This past year, we've had an unfortunate economic depression where we've lost record levels of jobs and have had millions of individuals potentially facing eviction this fall. I would like to ask you all, what is your position on how your candidate is going to assist the economy? I will start again in the same order. Kennedy, how is Howie Hawkins going to address this current economic crisis?
Well, I think Howie Hawkins is a great choice from this perspective because not only does he go beyond the austerity politics of the two major parties, but he goes beyond even what a lot of people would consider sort of progressive economic reform into like a full FDR style kind of New Deal, like we really need to change our economy type of reform. And I think that a lot of us recognize that a progressive, transformative vision for our economy is probably necessary right now, given that we're facing massive eviction, massive job loss, and then climate change is right around the corner. And we know that that is going to change our economy forever. Howie's talking about that in his economic plans. I don't see enough of that in anybody else's economic plans by comparison. So, right now it's like we're facing the wealth gap, major insecurity of basic needs, and a highly polluting industrial system. Howie has a policy, or not one, but many policies that address all of this, including support for worker co-ops and trade unions, support for public ownership of big banks and large industries, support for getting to 100% clean energy by 2030, and a lot of other policies that could really transform our economy completely, and that's what we need right now.
Okay, thank you, Kennedy. Danny, why do you believe Joe Biden is the best for the economy?
Yeah, well, first I'd like to point out that public ownership of large industries, as Kennedy stated, is not something that any successful country in recent memory has been able to accomplish and grow with. It's not a vision for America that, frankly, many people are ever going to go for. So, I think that having that vision of how we're going to transform America is just going to be futile. And, it's frankly a waste of donors' money to ask them to support, a campaign to have the government take over large industries. But Joe Biden has a vision that, is compassionate with people. It tells people, we're not going to let large corporations run all over you. We're going to break up companies when they get to a point where they're making the market stop functioning. And that's really the role that the government has been neglecting too much for too long. And that's why I think he's the man for the job.
Okay,
Thank
Kennedy,
you.
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond, as he specifically quoted Howie Hawkins and your policy.
Sure. I would just point out that there are countries that have publicly owned banks where it works just fine. There are also countries with large worker-owned co-ops that work just fine. The Mondragon Corporation is possibly one of the best examples that I encourage everybody to take a moment. If you think that the idea of public ownership of corporations is insane, you should look at the Mondragon Corporation, because that's 50,000 employees in a public-owned model, and they're doing just fine. It's one of the most successful corporations in the world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Kennedy. Dev, Steve, I will give you the chance to address why Donald Trump is the best for the economy.
Now, I had a question for Danny. What is Biden's policies going forth on the economy?
I mean, there are like dozens upon. Do you want me to go through a list of dozens of Biden's individual economic policies?
Just a rundown, just a quick rundown.
So first of all, he wants to reverse the Trump tax cuts. And the Bush tax cuts before them that are still around, because he believes that the wealthy and large corporations should be paying their fair share, and they aren't. Quite frankly, the wealthy are paying a lower effective tax rate than the middle class, and that's not okay. And then, as far as spending goes, Joe Biden does not believe in increasing military budgets every year, but he does believe in things like raising the minimum wage, and investing in people and communities directly.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Bethany now. Bethany, why do you believe Mark Charles is the best for the economy?
Mark Charles is the best for the economy is because he understands that right now it's not going to be simple. Moving forward is not going to be simple. We're not going to just automatically turn this around and be prosperous all of a sudden. What he does want is equality in our economy, and to start centering it around climate change, to start coming up with solutions economy-wise for the future, but it needs to start being centered more towards conserving our earth. He does support cash payments, but he's for making things easier during this transition, but it's all a step-by-step process. He has a very forward approach and a step-by-step kind of outlook. And it all starts in our Constitution. Starts
thank you, Bethany.
foundationally.
Michael, why do you believe Joe Jorgensen will be the best candidate for the economy?
Okay, so I'm figuring out the mute button and the stop cam button, but I think it's very odd. If you look at the COVID crisis, what has worked and what has not worked? Well, we've had PPP, huge government program. Does anyone think it worked? Or did that to very companies who knows what they're doing with the funds, maybe putting it in or something? What had done during this amounts of vision, they have allowed medical providers to that have worked have been freeing the market, freeing people to provide services. As said before, we have trillions of very talented people and very talented companies. The first person to diagnose COVID in the States, Dr. Julie Chu, she did this on her own, and at every step of the way, she was hindered from going forward by government agencies. If we could just unleash people like Julie Chu and companies, we could do so much better than we're doing now without these huge government budgets.
Okay, thank you, Michael. We'll go through our second round addressing the economy. Dev, Steve, is there anything you would like to address on the subject of the economy?
Yeah, Trump released his agenda for the next term, where he spoke about what he would try to do for the economy. One would be to basically bring the jobs back. He wants to bring home 1 million manufacturing jobs from China. I don't know if it's possible, but to me, I've learned not to doubt the orange guy, so I don't doubt him. Tax credits for companies that's coming back from China, which is an incentive to be able to kind of bargain with these guys to be able to come home, bring it back, make it made in America again. Not to mention, I want to expand on the opportunity zones again for communities like where I'm from, that brings private money into the communities and incentivize private lenders and private investors to come inside these communities and basically blossom this community of great back into greatness. So that's one thing that I love that he's doing. He's the guy. He's the guy for the job. If we talking about economy, I don't know what's the even debate about. He kind of holds his own in this sense. On this, I don't think for a second that he's gonna miss a beat. I know he understands that small businesses employ 59 million people in the U.S. He understands that 82% of the businesses that fails, they lack cash flow, which is basically a startup. The startups usually fail due to either low funding, can't get funding, kind of how you was just talking about with the PPE loans that was coming out. They're going to bigger corporations that's cornering markets. And it's a problem. It's something that has to be dealt with. So I think he understands that, and he's for the people like me, the other small business owners that's really trying to get it back to where we were pre-COVID.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'll ask for Kennedy. Kennedy, want to address why Howie Hawkins, in your opinion, is still the best for the economy?
Yeah, especially, I didn't have this number in front of me. I wanted to have it in front of me. But to continue on the line of thinking about publicly owned banks, Germany is regarded by even people that are quite conservative as one of the most stable economies in the world. 40% of their banking is publicly owned. Canada also has major publicly owned banking, another very strong, stable, not necessarily the strongest, but very stable economy. And I think that, when we look at Howie Hawkins' policies, it's very easy to look at some of these things and kind of dismiss them out of hand as like too far out there. But I would argue that this is the minimum that we need to do right now is something like this, not necessarily all these exact things, but transformative policies like this are the minimum that we need to do right now. Both of the major parties are talking austerity. That's what we're hearing from the major parties right now on a lot of levels is like, talk that the coffers are empty and that like things are going to be hard in the wake of COVID. So I don't think that we have to put up with that. I think we can have a transformative economy that works for us.
Okay. Danny, care to respond?
Yeah, I don't think the Democratic Party is talking about that, austerity at all. I also don't think Donald Trump is. Donald Trump just signed off on the largest deficit in United States history, and the year before that he also did, and the year before that as well. So to say that somehow the parties are like, somehow cutting back on government spending too much, to me, it just seems like a completely baseless claim.
Okay. Nope. We'll go to Dev. Steve, Trump was name checked. Dev, do you care to respond?
Yeah. As far as Trump increasing the deficit, of course he was increasing the deficit, but he's bringing so much hope back to the flyover countries, as we like to call it. He's kind of small people feel like he's fighting for. I'm not saying that it's true on any sense, but in the sense of just the confidence in the person. I don't know, probably two of these guys that's on here that the other candidates, but Biden is not even close, man. He's stumbling over words. He supports China to the point where when I was looking up his policies and it said something about China, he said, don't worry about China too much. When they're stealing our big tech companies' intellectual property, they're stealing it and then they're feeding it to the mainland and wrapping it up in their own little version of a company. So I don't know. I'd say kind of like just think about it a little bit on that end.
Okay. Danny, Joe Biden was name checked. I'll give you 30 seconds to respond.
Yeah. So intellectual property theft is a problem, but it's not nearly as big of a problem as some people are making it out to be. And the reality is that China, while they do steal our intellectual property, the amount of money that they're making off of that is estimated to be, south of $500 billion. It's not that much, and considering that the Chinese market is not that large, and also considering that, it's mostly affecting multinational corporations. I don't see how this is like the biggest issue in our relations with China.
Okay. Bethany, care to chime in on again why you believe Mark Charles is the best for the economy? You are on mute, just as a heads up.
Well, one, Mark Charles understands that we can't just go back pre-COVID. There's no going back pre-COVID. There's only post-COVID. We have to do what we can to mediate now and for the future, and we need to make sure it's equal for everyone. What both Biden and Trump want to do is either take us back or restore. What are we restoring to? Because it never included everyone. It didn't include restoring it back to when. It didn't include people of color. It didn't include women. We need to move forward, not backwards. He understands that, it all starts at the foundation, and we must address that so we can actually move forward.
Okay. Michael, care to wrap up with the subject of the economy?
Sure. Didn't we do that before?
Yeah, we go 2 rounds. This is your second chance to be able to respond on the subject.
I didn't get my second either.
Oh,
You
okay.
used your first to ask a question. So we're going to wrap up on the subject of the economy with Michael.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we are a country of tremendous talent. We have the best companies in the world, the most innovative companies in the world, and yet we make them jump into hoops if they want to import something. If they need supplies, or if they want, even often if they want to export things. We just make it very hard for companies and people to go about doing the business they do. And we do that when you see the industries where we do this more, like healthcare and education, it's even worse. And you see that we have very bad results, very high cost here. And in the areas like technology, where we have less regulation, we do extremely well. So I would like to spread that, I would like to unfetter companies and individuals in every industry so that, our economy will be what we have now and so much more.
Okay. Thank you all for addressing the subject of the economy. We're now going to move on to our second subject. It's healthcare. We obviously were just going through a pandemic, and we still are today. We have seen some of the stresses on the system cause some problems. I would like to ask you why you believe your candidate is the best to address the economy. And I'm going to start with Dev Steve to understand why Trump will be the best for the economy.
You said the economy again?
No, I did say that mistakenly. I meant healthcare. Thank you for that.
Because I really did want to speak on it, but I'll skip to the healthcare. Okay. From the release of the new agenda, Trump is proposing to cut prescription drug prices, put patients and doctors back in charge of our healthcare system, which I don't understand what that means. I'm guessing more transparency, lower healthcare insurance premiums, end surprise billing, cover all pre-existing conditions, protect Social Security and Medicare, protect our veterans, and provide world-class healthcare services. Now, what I do know is our healthcare system is broken. That's one thing I think all of us on this panel can agree with. We all probably have different ways of getting about to. Some probably want universal healthcare. Some probably want whatever it is. Me, myself, I believe in the free market. So I do think that we should try to implement some of these things he's talking about. But I do understand it's going to be hard to implement now that we've basically gave these healthcare providers this much leeway, and these hospitals also. So it's kind of hard to take the pacifier away from the baby when you spoil them so long a little bit. I'm going to end there. I'm over my time.
Okay. Danny, why do you believe Joe Biden will be the best on the subject of healthcare?
Well, I'd start by saying, you can say Donald Trump supports whatever you want to say, but the fact of the matter is he crafted this American Health Care Act that died almost instantly because it didn't accomplish, any of the reforms needed in the industry. And frankly, Trump hasn't accomplished anything on the subject during his administration. Our uninsured rate has gone up. Healthcare is getting more expensive every year. Prescription drugs are getting more expensive every year. He's not letting us import them from any other country, like he said in the past that he was interested in. He said previously that he liked Scotland's universal healthcare system, and then he's done nothing on the issue. Frankly, he thinks the status quo is all right, and it's not. And so Joe Biden's plan not only creates a public option that any American can buy into at an affordable rate for them. And one more second, John. But it also addresses other issues in healthcare that are inflating costs unnecessarily. And, ultimately, Joe Biden, being a human being, cares about getting the best healthcare to the most people possible. And his entire group of policies is geared around that.
Okay, Dev, Steve, Donald Trump was name checked. 30 seconds to respond.
Yeah. Once again, I just went through the list. I tried to explain his agenda. And from the Biden candidate, the person that's supposed to be supporting him, all you heard was nothing. This is the guy that was behind Obama, that's been in for 50 years. And we're talking like he's going to bring change. We know it's not going to happen like that. He couldn't even name the plan. Really. I only got 10 seconds of what Biden was going to do, and then almost a minute or really over, because you raised your hand, worth of what Trump is like. It's too much, man. You kind of got to focus on the message to Biden, and it's not resonating with people. That's why I'm not voting for the guy.
Again, 30 seconds to respond, Danny, before we go on to the others.
Sure. Well, you listed all those policies, Dev, Steve, but the fact is, the list of what he actually did in his 4 years, 2 of which had, an entire party trifecta in Congress, he accomplished, virtually none of that. And, if you look at Joe Biden and what he accomplished as vice president, it's just so much greater. You mentioned pre-existing conditions coverage on your list. That is only there because of Joe Biden.
Okay, we're going to move on, though. Kennedy, I'm going to ask you now, why is Howie Hawkins the best for the subject of healthcare?
Sure. I mean, like Dev Steve said, I think one thing we can all agree on here is that there's issues with our healthcare system. I think a lot of people are being completely failed by it, particularly the working class. And although not everybody agrees on what the solution should be, again, we all see this problem. And I think the issue with many proposed solutions is that a lot of the half measures are going to cost us more money in the long run. The countries that are doing the best with universal healthcare are the ones that unequivocally transition to universal healthcare and put everything in the ownership of the government that needs to be, and like really make it work for the people. If you do a half measure, we're going to end up with an inflated cost system that makes subsidized healthcare look bad. And like, that's going to just fail all of us in the long run. So I think that the way to make universal healthcare save us all money makes sense is a plan like Howie Hawkins, which is, a completely transformative plan that would change the way medical ownership works, from the bottom to the top.
Okay, thank you, Kennedy. Michael, want to address why you believe Joe Jorgensen is the best for the subject of healthcare?
Yes. Okay, so total agreement with there is a problem. We spend more on healthcare than any other developed country, and we get some of the worst results. And people say, oh, we're the only one who doesn't have public healthcare, and that's the problem. And they blame the market. But guess what? We have not had market healthcare in this country for a long, long time. It starts with the employer tax deduction. Healthcare is not between a healthcare provider and an individual. It all has to go through the employer, which is just a huge layer in between. Restrictions on telemedicine, restrictions between states on transferring health personnel, which they got rid of during the crisis. Restrictions on building hospitals. Often you can't build a hospital unless you go to some bureaucrat and have to try to prove to them that you need the hospital. All these restrictions are what makes healthcare expensive. If we were here 100 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about healthcare. We'd be talking about food. But the market has made food. It's not anything we talk about. It's just a commodity. And if we let the market free, healthcare will just become a cheap commodity like food.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Bethany, care to respond on why you believe Mark Charles is the best for the subject of healthcare?
Well, he does support universal healthcare, but again, it all starts with our foundation. Who does it actually help? Until you actually fix the Constitution, until you actually fix the foundations, who does it actually help? Right now with Trump, it's the 1%. With Biden and Trump, they don't necessarily understand self-employed and gig economy. With Mark Charles, he's done gigs. He understands what it's like and the way many millennials operate. He understands what we need to do. So one, we need to fix that. It's a step-by-step process. With Biden's Obamacare, it has slapped fees onto people, especially the self-employed, if it's not tied to these corporations. Trump has torn down our healthcare system, and it does not benefit anyone else except for the top, probably about 20-30%. We need to address this for everyone, and Biden and Trump does not address.
Thank you, Bethany. We're going to go to Steve for his final comment, and then we'll go to Davey, as both of them were name checked. So first, Steve, care to make your final response on healthcare?
Yeah, I was really just responding about Bethany's claim that everything needs to be torn down. Again, I didn't really hear the policy set forth from her candidate or anything, but I disagree. I just totally disagree. Right now, I can't name someone from my neighborhood that doesn't have health care. So I can't sit here and say like that's something that I'm going to keep over someone's head. But to touch on a couple more things, as far as universal health care, a lot of those countries that we like to praise, they raise the taxes on the lower income people. They don't raise the taxes on the wealthy, how everyone thinks. They raise the taxes on the lower people. There's no minimum wage. A lot of people don't understand these things about when they point to these Nordic countries like this. It's a lot of things that we can implement, that we probably should implement, that we probably should test out or anything like that. But when you go to a country that has the population of Arkansas or something, it's hard to compare to America. And another thing you said from the economy thing, when you said, what are we going back to? We were the number one economy. We were number one. We were booming. I was booming. I know your business was booming. Like, what are we here doing?
Okay. Danny, care to respond on why you believe Joe Biden is the best healthcare candidate?
Sure, yeah. I think Bethany is completely right that our healthcare system is not working well enough right now. And I honestly, I think if you look at, Joe's actual policy platform on healthcare, it would make American healthcare, the best it's been in U.S. history by a long shot. And the fact of the matter is not all of it's going to pass. And I'll be honest about that. Not all of it's going to pass. Right. And that's just the reality of being a president is you're not a dictator. The interest groups, Congress, the Supreme Court, the entire system is designed to make reform harder. And that's been more apparent in healthcare than anywhere else. But I do believe that Joe Biden, has humans as his priority. I think his direction of making sure we get healthcare to as many people as we can get it to, and as cheaply as possible, using innovative solutions. I think is the best we're going to do as a country.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Bethany, and then we'll go Kennedy, and then Michael to wrap up. Bethany, care to respond again on why you believe Mark Charles is the best for healthcare?
Well, one, he thinks it's a right, not a privilege. Again, unless you address the root and the foundation of the problem, it's not going to end up covering everyone. Again, I agree with you that we need stuff that passes. So it definitely is a step-by-step process. Again, he understands that it's right now in the midst of COVID, it's not going to be a prosperous time, but he's going to make it easier for everyone to transition. It's about making relationships and getting things done. Based off what I've seen personally from both Biden and Trump, they have not. As someone who is self-employed, and I know you said, Trump, as someone who supports Trump, you don't personally know someone who isn't covered by healthcare. I personally am not covered by healthcare. Why? Well, one, it is absolutely expensive, outrageously expensive. It actually makes more sense to go without healthcare than to go with healthcare. With Biden, it makes it's slightly better. But again, if you don't have healthcare and you actually get fined for it, none of them are actually trying to solve the problem at a foundational level.
Okay, I'm going to give Deb Steve 15 seconds to respond, and then we'll go back to Kennedy and Michael.
Yeah, I totally agree with that problem. I know a lot of freelancers, a lot of entrepreneurial people who have that problem. The premiums are sky high. I understand that, but I mean, it is what it is right now. Until we fix it, we can keep blaming the president, but this falls on voting for Congress, Senate. This falls on all of that combined.
Okay. Kennedy, care to respond and give your
absolutely. So first of all, I just want to say that I think a lot of times when people think about universal health care, they think like Dev Steve, and I don't blame you, about the Nordic countries. I would encourage everyone to look at Bolivia, one of the lowest GDP countries in the world, extremely poor, and was able to give their citizens health care at a price that is not killing the working class. It's helping the working class. The working class are spending less money on that little bit of taxes by far than they were on insurance and premiums and all the things that cost you money. I'd rather spend $200 in taxes per year and get my health care personally. So look at Bolivia as something I'd recommend. The other thing I'd like to say is in regards to the free market helping, I think it's almost laughable to bring up food, considering that over the past 10 years, the cost of food has increased by 26% and food deserts are on the rise. Saying that the free market can solve this problem is sort of absurd when the free market isn't solving any of our problems right now, in my opinion. But on the other hand, universal healthcare could benefit the market because often the market is discussed from the highest level perspective, but universal healthcare would benefit the market at the workers level perspective because you wouldn't be beholden to an employer for your healthcare. That gives you the freedom to change employers easily, to be self-employed, to do a lot of things that we couldn't do without it.
Okay, thank you, Kennedy. Michael, care to wrap up on the subject of healthcare?
Yes, so I will reference something which Kennedy said about food not being a good comparison. If you look 100 years ago to now, we used to spend something like 25% of our budget on food. And we would have famines if you go back 150 years, even more so. Yes, is food a little more expensive now? It is in the last 10 years. There are reasons for this. One big reason is ethanol. We have a huge program which takes huge amount of farmland for ethanol, which is just a total waste. If you got rid of things like that, food prices would go down. And we have all sorts of, lots of food gets wasted too because we have all these food regulations. So if we got rid of these things, food prices would most definitely go down. And if you look at the things we're doing with like meatless meat, there's a huge amount of innovation going on. So it looks like we will have much cheaper food soon. And with healthcare, it's the exact same thing. If you let innovation, like was happening in the food industry, happen, prices will go down, prices will become commodities. And then, you don't have to worry about being a right because it'll just be really cheap.
Okay, we're going to move on, Kennedy, to our next subject. So thank you all for addressing the subject of healthcare. We're now going to go on to the subject of our democracy. I would like to ask you all, how do you believe your candidate is going to increase representativeness of our people in our country? I'm going to start with this question with Danny. Danny, why do you believe Joe Biden is the best candidate for our democracy?
Yeah, so all over the country, Democrats have been the party of supporting ranked choice voting, increasing voter turnout, making it easier for people to vote, even if they're felons, even if they are, young people, even if they're in a rural area far away from voting booths. The Democratic Party and the progressive movement in general has been the reason why our government has gotten so much more representative, frankly, for hundreds of years. And we have a lot of work to do, and I think Joe Biden realizes that certainly more than Donald Trump. And right here in Virginia, we now have ranked choice voting because of Virginia Democrats. We passed this on a party line vote, and frankly, if Republicans had been in control, it would not have happened. And I think the only shot we have at getting ranked choice voting and other policies that will, make candidates like Howie Hawkins and Joe Jorgensen have a shot in the future is by electing Joe Biden.
Okay, thank you, Danny. We'll now go to Dev Steve. Why do you believe Donald Trump is the best candidate for democracy and representativeness for the people?
I just think that he's for us more than Biden. The interest of Biden is aligning his kids' pockets and his, not necessarily the people's, not bringing jobs back, not worrying. I mean, I don't know what the right vote is or anything like that, but Democrats have always played this role into thinking like voter fraud is me not needing to show an ID or just some of the most craziest stuff. And it becomes pandering to a point, I feel like. You try to pander too hard for identity politics, and it leads into this just god-awful thing. But I don't necessarily know if Trump's going to help out on that or not, because he's kind of authoritarian in a sense where he's it's a couple things I just don't agree with Trump on sometimes, and that is one of them. He has the picks and chooses of when democracy works in his favor, so I will say that. But as far as if he's better than Biden, I mean, I'm going to go with Trump every day. That's my defense on that.
Okay, Danny, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond, and then we'll go to Kennedy afterwards.
Sure. So I agree that I don't know if Trump is going to do anything on the issue. He hasn't in his 4 years. He hasn't attempted any meaningful democracy or reform at all, or even expressed support for it. And frankly, expecting any of that to change in the next 4 years I see as silly. You can say that Joe Biden's pockets are lined by corporations. Honestly, I haven't seen evidence that he is somehow secretly, working for the big banks. Every politician, receives contributions from a large number of companies. And that's, a reality because of our campaign finance regulation. But Donald Trump is against any campaign finance reform at all. and Joe Biden, has supported it over and over. And the Democratic Party has been the party that's been passing campaign finance reform in the only states that have it.
Okay, I'm actually going to give Dev Steve 15 seconds to respond, and then we'll go.
I just want 15 seconds to say the DNC, as far as democracy, it should show you the way they treated Tulsi Gabbard, the way the Clinton Foundation went down to Haiti and pulled their stunts, the way Ukraine has been basically this little Gotham City of different politicians' kids. All of this should be very concerning. And when you bring up an established politician, not just Democrat, an established politician, it kind of gives you that irky feeling that your best interest is not being imposed.
Okay. Kennedy, why do you believe Howie Hawkins is the best candidate for democracy?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons, and I think it's really interesting to say that no candidate is, not funded by dirty money, because Howie Hawkins is funded by a pretty clean campaign. I just want to say, for the record, his campaign is people funded. Howie himself is a working class guy. He works for $14 an hour. I know this for a fact because I've met him. And he knows what it's like to work on a real living wage. He also knows what it's like to have democracy denied from him. And I think right now our democracy is kind of in shambles. Primaries are run in the shadows and leave doubt to their validity. People are denied their vote regularly. If we don't act soon, I'm kind of worried that we're not really going to be able to say that we have any democracy at all. So the Howie Hawkins platform, I support it because it is very strong in this regard. When we talk about the kind of things that we're looking for in election reform, Howie Hawkins' campaign is a laundry list of all of your favorite things, from DC statehood to ending voting suppression of felons, to voting as a holiday, to ranked choice voting. The reforms that we need to feel like we can be given the sort of the wheel and be back in the driver's seat of our democracy are in Howie's campaign.
Okay, thank you, Kennedy. Michael, care to respond why you believe Joe Jorgensen is the best candidate for democracy?
Yes. Okay. So there's been a little talk about voting. I'm going to take a slightly different tact. You can vote for one party, which gives you foreign wars, which throws you in prison for drug offenses, for sex work, which can seize your assets whenever it wants, and the police have no accountability. Or you can vote for the other party, which does the exact same thing. We would like a much smaller government where power does not reside in bureaucrats and politicians, where it resides in individuals. So regardless of who you elect, there are boundaries between what the government and what politicians can impose
you, Michael.
upon.
We'll go to Bethany now. Bethany, why do you believe Mark Charles is the best candidate for our democracy?
He's definitely the best candidate for our democracy. One, he's addressing the root of the problem. Again, it starts with our Constitution and its amendments. First, it starts with abolishing slavery. Right now, our 13th Amendment says we abolish slavery and involuntary servitude except as punishment as crime. Wants to get rid of that. Secondly, it mostly only has pronouns to address men, but not for women. We need to add she, her, because that opens up a lot of loopholes. He wants to keep corporations accountable, getting rid of Citizens United. He wants to do Election Day as national holiday, establishing automatic voter registration, restore voting rights to felons, and ranked choice voting. And you are wrong. It's not just Howie Hawkins. He also is not covered by any dirty money. So it's not any other candidates. And the way I see it, he's the only one addressing the real root of the problem. Anything else, if you don't address the root of the problem, then it still opens up for loopholes. We must fix that first before we can build on top
Kennedy,
of that.
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond because you were name-checked on the subject of Howie Hawkins.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to say I didn't say that Howie was the only people-funded candidate, just that I wanted to challenge the assertion that no one in the race was not taking dirty money. And Mark Charles, as far as I know, his financing also extremely clean and trustworthy. And I just want to say also for the record that Howie Hawkins supports a constitutional amendment for the right to vote and other constitutional reforms that specifically address voting. So I think that, this is another candidate that's looking right at the root of the issue.
Okay, thank you, Kennedy. We're now going to go with our final round here. Dev, Steve, I'm going to give you your final words on why you think Trump is the best on democracy, even though you admitted he might not be.
Yeah. What the libertarians say.
Succinct. Okay. Danny, I'm going to go with you now. Why do you believe Joe Biden is the best for democracy with your final answers?
Yeah, so in short, I'd say that it's because we've seen Democrats championing democracy reform and be the only party that's ever accomplished something on the subject in recent memory. And Joe Biden, by all means, we have no reason to believe he won't continue that direction for the party that he's vocally supported so many times, and that he's actually done a lot in the way of in terms of voting reform under Obama. And we've seen Trump roll back so many important things and do what he can to help states to suppress voter turnout. Where we really need to build back better on democracy reform.
Okay, Dev, Steve, I'm going to give you a chance to respond.
When you say suppress voter turnout, what do you mean by that?
Sure. So first of all, I mean that Donald Trump and his Republican allies in Virginia, I know, unanimously voted against ranked choice voting for us. Luckily, they lost.
What is right choice? What is right choice voting?
Ranked choice voting basically allows you to list your candidates in order of preference, and then if your first choice candidate has the lowest of the group's number one slots at the end of the first round, then they'll count your second vote instead. So that way, somebody could say, if Howie Hawkins is their first choice and Joe Biden's their second choice, they could vote for Howie Hawkins at number one and then Joe Biden at number two. And then if Howie Hawkins, pulls in at 3%, their vote will be counted for Joe Biden instead. So that way, people can vote for third parties, can vote their conscience while also having the same amount of power on the plurality voting system as someone who votes for the practical candidate.
Okay, I don't really know too much about anything Trump has done specifically on voter fraud or anything. Everyone has their own different views on the matter of Republicans and GOP or the DNC both doing kind of what they do as far as districting and everything else. But as far as Trump, I don't know where he would stand on that. I don't dig too far into it as far as voting rights and the pandering points.
Okay, I'm now going to go with Bethany. Bethany, again, final statements on why you believe Mark Charles is the best candidate for democracy. I believe you're on mute right now. Bethany, you're on mute right now.
Bethany, you're muted.
For one, neither Trump or Biden addresses these issues. I haven't heard anything on Biden say anything about ranked choice voting or any of the things that would actually help give people more power in our voting process. I haven't heard anything. So with him, he's actually would help democracy, like I said, by fixing the foundation. Also, he wants to, again, automatic voting rights, restore voting rights to felons, and again, addressing the amendments in our Constitution that actually include everything, actually either removing it completely or rewriting.
Okay. Danny, we're going to give you 30 seconds to respond, and then we'll go to Michael and then Kennedy.
Yeah, sure. So I'm just looking at Joe Biden's website right now, and it says, until we fix campaign finance, voting rights, and gerrymandering, it will continue to get more polarized, more ugly, and more mean. But it's not just what he says, because he said a lot of things, but he's also done a lot of things, and he's led the party that's done a lot of things. And there's only one party that, frankly, that's done anything on this issue, and it's his party that he's been leading for all these years. And to somehow say that, like, oh, he hasn't made any recent statement on it, so we can just assume he'll be, somehow against, everything that the party's been doing for recent decades. I just don't think that makes any sense.
Okay, I'm going to go with Michael now. Michael, what is your final statement on why you believe Joe Jorgensen is the best for democracy?
Okay, I'm going to use an analogy here. The drug war has not worked. Prohibition has not worked. Why? Because we went after people like Pablo Escobar. We went after distilleries, and the fact is people want these goods, so they are going to find a way to get them. You can talk about campaign finance reform, you can talk about dirty money, but when politicians have the power to give perks to corporations, regardless of what laws you put, just like with prohibition, the money is going to find its way to the politicians. The only way to stop this is to take the power from the politicians so they can't give these perks. And then there would be no reason for dirty money to flow because it's going to be useless.
Okay, and Kennedy, want to wrap us up on this subject of why you believe Howie Hawkins is the best for democracy?
Sure. What I want to address in particular is, as I mentioned in my opening statement, the odds of a third-party candidate winning are pretty astronomically low, and I completely acknowledge this. But the odds of being able to pull out a high enough percentage for the Green Party to get nationwide ballot access and matching funds is actually relatively reasonable. And so rather than make the case just for Howie in particular, I want to make the case for the idea of having a Green Party person on your city council or somewhere like that, where a lot of these, even Danny has mentioned that a lot of these reforms are happening at the state level. So like when you think about like Howie Hawkins reforms, don't necessarily just think about it in terms of his presidency, but in terms of setting the standard for a Green Party that could have, local representatives in your state house, county commissioners, places like that, advocating for these election reforms. And we know that sometimes all it takes is one loud progressive voice to change the tone of a conversation in politics.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for answering on the subjects of democracy. We're now moving on to our final group subject. It is on the subject of policing. And I would like to ask you all, why do you believe your candidate is going to be the best candidate for both the people and, as we all know, we would like some order in society? Why do you believe your candidate is the best to be able to achieve both of those goals? I'm going to start this time with Michael.
Okay. So right now, as we've seen through all the protests wrecking our country, police have very little accountability. We need accountability. We need to get rid of things like qualified immunity to which protect the police. There is no way we can have law and order unless we have a police force which the community trusts and which knows the law and which obeys the law. So we need reforms which make sure that the police do that. Additionally, there are so many laws, drug laws, sex work laws, where we have victimless, I don't even want to call them victimless crimes, they're victimless acts, but we choose to criminalize them. And this contributes to a huge prison population. We know who gets disproportionately affected by this. We just have to stop criminalizing a lot of things where there are no victims.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Next, I'm going to go with Bethany. Bethany, why do you believe Mark Charles is the best candidate for the people and order in order to have a better criminal justice system?
Again, we need to start at the root of the problem. We need to start with our Constitution and then build from there. New laws will not solve our problems. We do need to build upon it later, but once we get to the foundation, then we can add on it. We do need training. We do need all these things, but just focusing on individual police will not solve the problem. We need to go up where it starts, which is with the lawmakers and people in positions of power. What Mark Charles stands for is actually leading by example, fixing the foundations, making it equal. As someone who is a Native American man, he understands this much better than any of the other candidates.
Okay. Kennedy, care to respond on why you believe Howie is the best on criminal justice reform?
Sure. I think that there's no question that our police are overburdened. that we're asking them to do too much. Even if you support the police, I think you ought to be able to agree with this statement that we are asking them to wear 10 hats when perhaps we should be asking them to wear just 1 or 2, and maybe moving some stuff to other groups or other agencies. And that's Howie Hawkins' platform on criminal justice in a nutshell. First of all, it addresses the legalization and decriminalization of a lot of victimless acts, as Michael very aptly called them. I like calling them that as well. And then second of all, he also discusses reforms similar to, if anyone is familiar with Portland City, has been increasing over the last few years the number of 911 calls that are answered by social workers. So Howie Hawkins' platform addresses things like that of let's burden the police less and make sure that what police force we have is doing the most important jobs that they could be, and that everything else being handled by someone more appropriate.
Okay. Dev Steve, care to respond on why you believe Donald Trump will be the best candidate on criminal justice?
Yeah, I'd rather touch on how my other guy Danny over there did. Why I think Joe Biden would not be the best fit. Because as a black man, I've seen with my own eyes what his policies have led to. And I can take you down the loophole of way back in 1977. It started when we were fighting for these rights to actually be able to go to school with other white people and integrate. And Joe Biden made the comment of, unless we do something about this, my children are going to grow up in a jungle. The jungle being a racial jungle with the tensions having built so high that it's going to explode. And then turn around in 1994, he wrote the crime bill. Remind you, I'm the second generation of desegregation of this. Like my mom was the first, and she's 50. you see what I'm saying? So one thing I am scared of is a ballot that has Biden and Harris' name on it with her record also. So I don't really care what it could be that Trump has. He does support the thin blue line. I'll never be a F the police. I'll never be a defund the police. But I do think they should stop policing for profit. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Danny, care to respond why you believe Joe Biden is the best candidate on the subject of criminal justice reform?
Sure. So sorry if I sound like a broken record, but the fact of the matter is on this issue as well, after, everything that happened, all across America and cities and states, Democrats were the only party that took this issue seriously, that decided to come back and make these reforms. Kennedy mentioned that we need to have more appropriate people responding to mental health crises, for example. And now in Virginia, we have a system because and only because Democrats are in control of the General Assembly and the governor's office. We have a system now where if you call 911 for a mental health emergency, they will send a mental health coordinator as a supervisor of the site. And, we would not have that if Republicans were in control. It's that simple. And, if people had voted for the Green Party instead of Democrats, we also would not have that. So, I think we're the best party to handle this. And I think Joe Biden's prepared to lead in that way.
Okay. I'm going to go now with our second round of responding, and I'm going to start with Dev Steve because you had your hand raised. Dev, care to respond?
It's funny that people speak of having these social workers now and all of this, but what I find funny is do you think we feel safe calling the police? Like, as a last resort, very last resort, I press 911 on my phone, bro. Like, I'm just telling you real stuff right now. As a last resort, I barely and I understand that I have to walk a certain way. I have to act a certain way when the time comes for stuff like that. My little kids, my little brother, he's 11, 6 foot tall. You are mistaken for a 17-year-old. He's just country bred. But I understand they're gonna look at him as a threat automatically. And this comes from the prison industrial complex, which was started by Joe Biden. Kamala Harris, she kept people in prison longer. It's state maintenance jobs that they give these people. They're making tags for the vehicles, all of this other stuff. And it's the Democratic Party behind it.
Okay. Danny, I'm going to give you the chance to respond as Biden was name dropped, but I'm going to give you the full 90 seconds for your second round as well.
Sure. Yeah. So I don't disagree with you. I think, frankly, that both parties have contributed to, the enormity of the prison industrial complex, and the policing system we have today, and it's an abomination. But Democrats admit that that we've gone too far, that we have a horrible and racist system, and that it needs to be fundamentally changed. And the Republican Party does not admit that, and they don't intend to fix the problem. And I don't see.
They wasn't in control of the cities. What are they supposed to do?
Let's not interrupt here. Danny, finish your statement.
Well, you've been in control of the White House and both parties of Congress, for 2 years, and 2 of the 3 for 4 years, and what has the president done to stop what you're talking about?
Okay, Dev, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond.
We all know on this. Everyone's smart here, and we all know a president cannot do nothing on the federal level. It comes down, how Kennedy was just talking about, to locality, the local government, state and local government. When Mobile is a Democratic city and we have murders, Memphis, Birmingham, all of these, New Orleans, all of these cities are ran by Democrats inside of a Republican state. That doesn't necessarily mean nothing when you're just pointing out the Republican Party. I know firsthand of what can happen at the hands of a Democratic mayor or city council or any of these things.
Okay, Kennedy, care to have your final statement on criminal justice reform?
Sure, absolutely. I just want to say that Denver City Council, one DSA member was elected to Denver City Council, and that one DSA member was able to represent the will of the people in regards to private prisons, and was able to sway the city council that previously had no interest in abolishing private prisons to get rid of all private prison contracts for the city of Denver. That is not insignificant. All right. That is a very significant win. So when we talk about would having Greens in office help? Absolutely, it would, because one strong progressive voice could completely change these conversations, as I said before. And you're not going to get a stronger progressive voice than Howie Hawkins or someone who's following his platform, at least in terms of people currently running, because his platform is extremely strong and is not just defund the police completely, but is, as I said, based on let's look at how we can do this better.
Okay, thank you, Kennedy. Michael, your final statements on the subject of criminal justice reform.
One sec.
Okay, Michael, I'll give you a moment to work this out. Let's go. Okay, do you have it now working?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think as both Dev Steve and Danny Anderson, they've created some accusations. It's very clear that neither the Democrats nor the Republicans are serious about criminal justice reform. Both of them have their connections to the police unions. They're just very embedded in both parties, and they will make performative gestures, but you are never going to get reform from either of the major parties, which disrupt their police union ties.
Okay. And Bethany, your turn for giving a final statement on why you believe Mark Charles is best for criminal justice reform.
Well, first, I would like to address that Joe Biden has had over 40 years in office, and he also made things worse with the crime bill and many other of his own laws. And not only that, he says he stands by it, and he has not once owned up to anything that has helped lead to the problems today. Secondly, Donald Trump has actually escalated a lot of situations, and not only that, when you actually send unmarked cars to snatch people up, how is that just, and how is that democracy? Having unmarked police cars going and snatching people up and taking them to who knows where. So I don't think either of them are the solution to our problems for this. We need someone like Mark Charles, Native American man who actually understands it. Unlike any of the other candidates, they don't understand it to the level he has. And he actually has the solutions for it. It's definitely not going to be Trump. It's definitely not going to be Biden. They have proven it. And not only that, the Dems actually voted to increase the police budget.
Okay, thank you, Bethany. I'm going to give Dev Steve 30 seconds, and then I'm going to give Danny Anderson 30 seconds as they were both name dropped, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, just because he's Native American doesn't mean that he knows more about what's policing or anything like that. They actually have their own government that polices their reservations. I understand that. But as far as does that make him better, I didn't hear nothing that necessarily stuck out. But as far as unmarked vehicles come to our neighborhoods daily. Jump out with guns, tell you don't you fucking move. Oh, excuse my mouth. They tell you that.
No worries.
They say don't you move, or we will shoot. What you got in your pockets, boy? This and that. This is how we get talked to. So like, I don't know what's the uproar about it. It happens. That's how they police. That's what happens when you're trying to show like, hey, law has to be obtained, law and order. That's what happens.
Okay, and Danny. Okay, Danny, 30 seconds for you.
Yeah, I don't really understand the criticism that voting to increase police budgets is somehow a bad thing. I think, if anything, the police is an underfunded organization. I think they're not able to attract talented enough people because they're underfunded. I think that we actually in a lot of areas of policing, we have police working hours that are too long, and in many cases we don't have them receiving enough training. We don't give them enough backup and resources. We leave them in situations where they end up doing horrible things, and it's really a problem that we can solve with more funding, not less.
Okay, thank you. So now we have wrapped up our group segment, and so we're going to conclude. We're going to give each person a conclusion statement, but our last thing is we want to ask each person here an individual question on their candidate. And so the first person I'm going to ask a question to is Bethany. Bethany, for Mark Charles, I want to know, being that he is representing independents, some of the argument for voting not for the Democrats or for the Republican is, as stated beforehand, people are looking to get this national fund for a party. As an independent, why do you believe people should try and join his campaign when, if he even reaches 5%, there's no national party funding?
At a point right now, we need to make a decision of whether or not we want to make the changes that we need. Right now, Biden nor Trump actually solves the problems. I don't personally think any other candidate does to the level he does. We're at a point where the people need to take back their own power. They need to make their own decisions. We don't need to be manipulated by what we think needs to happen. We just need to actually communicate. There has never been a time where we're all plugged in the way we are. This is the only time to do so. We need to make the decision to actually do better for our country, to actually give the opportunity for our country to heal.
Okay, thank you so much, Bethany. The next question is directed to Kennedy. Kennedy, I wanted to ask you, for the Green Party, as you said, you wanted to have a united left. You said he was on multiple party lines, but recently we've had new parties emerge constantly from the left. As of recently, we had the Movement for a People's Party come out this past Sunday. Why do you believe the long-term viability is with the Green Party when they've been in existence for 25 years plus, and that they haven't had anyone really on that local or state or federal level?
Well, I would turn it around a little bit. First of all, I would say the Green Party has had a lot of local and state victories over the years. Now, like in recent years, it's been less so, but especially like in the early days of the Green Party, which I believe that we could see a resurgence to that kind of level of support. The Green Party did frequently win local elections, not like all the time, but enough to change the conversation, enough to make a difference. So I'll say that first of all. Second of all, what I'll say is that I would flip this entire line of thinking around and say, if it's taken the Green Party this long to get partial nationwide ballot access and this long to get thousands of volunteers and all these things, then why would I support a party that doesn't have any of that yet? The Movement for a People's Party, I completely respect what they're about and the people behind it. A lot of them I respect, not all of them necessarily, but definitely some of them I respect a lot. But I believe it could take just as long to start a new independent left party as it could to use the existing vehicle and just say, hey, if we slap some new tires on this baby, it could go places.
Okay, thank you very much, Kennedy. My next question is for Michael. Michael, I wanted you to address, we talked about the economy earlier, but I want to specify specifically on the poor and working class. I think a lot of people have this perception that the Libertarian Party is asking people to try and pull themselves up from the bootstraps, but then people will respond that they can't even afford the bootstraps. Why do you believe the Libertarian Party is the best for the poor and working class?
Sure. Well, part of it is something I allude to, food. If the necessities of life get a lot cheaper, then it is much easier to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Also, if your economy is creating lots of jobs, then people are going to be employed and wages are going to go up because companies are going to be competing for workers. So it's really just let the market work so that wages go up and so that the prices of everything that people need go down. If you can do that, if you can provide better education, cheaper education, because you're using all the creativity of the market also, then people will be able to pull them up by the bootstraps.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. My next question is for you, Dev Steve. It is on Donald Trump. You know, a lot of people dislike Donald Trump, the person, the actual character of the individual and his, you know, I could go through a lot of characteristic traits, but a breaking of a lot of norms that we've associated with the presidential office, such as during the RNC, with them hosting a lot of events at the White House itself. For the people that just don't like Donald Trump, the person, what do you try to tell to them?
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard to convince someone because he's a New Yorker, especially like I'm a Southerner by heart, but he just has that rudeness, like he want to tell somebody like instantly, like he just has that rudeness about himself. But at the same time, a leader lead, and that's one thing that I can say he knows how to do. He does know how to lead. He does know how to take the initiative. He does know how to do certain things that I look for in a person. And that's kind of what you got to point to is who do you want leading right now? No offense to any other person with the independent party, but we already know that America is under a two-system party, and it's under scrutiny of these two people. So who do you want leading right now? You want the guy that don't remember his name and probably is in the later of Reagan years, or do you want the guy that actually ran businesses, actually knows how to converse with people, knows how to trade, and knows how to do the things that's going to be in our best interest?
Okay, thank you very much, Dev Steve. And now my final individual question is for you, Danny. So my question on the subject of Joe Biden is, Joe Biden, as everyone has alluded to, has had a long political career. What can you point to that he directly is responsible for that you think is good?
Yeah, so the Affordable Care Act would not have passed if not for Joe Biden. Because of that, over 20 million more people can say that they have health insurance when they wouldn't have it otherwise. He managed the Recovery Act, which essentially saved, all capitalism, in 2009 from, the worst recession we'd had in close to a century. And that's just in recent memory. But he also accomplished more, behind the scenes thing like reversing the tax cuts. He's responsible for a lot of the investment in HBCUs that we hadn't seen in the past. Joe Biden has accomplished a lot. Truman said something, like 70 years ago, not to sound too, politician-y, but he said, it's amazing how much you accomplish if you don't care who gets credit for it, right? Joe Biden has co-sponsored, hundreds of bills that have gone into law, many times more than your Bernie Sanderses of the world. And if you're willing to take the time to look at everything he's accomplished over the course of his career, it has been an immense impact. And while I disagree with some of the things he's done, I think the vast majority of it has moved the country forward, and I am grateful for that.
Okay, thank you very much, Danny. And I want to thank all of you for answering all of my questions today. I think this was a very productive and civil conversation, so I want to thank you all for being able to conduct yourself in that manner. With that being said, I want to give each of you a conclusionary statement of why you support your candidate and why you think the viewers currently should support them as well. I'm going to start with Michael. Michael, would you like to make the case on why people should be supporting Joe Jorgensen in 2020?
Sure. Okay. So the Democrats and the Republicans, every 4 years, 2 years, whatever, they tell you that they are going to solve your healthcare problems, your education problems, all your problems. And they never do. They tell you that they know what is best for you, what is best for your healthcare choices and for your education. And fact is, they don't. You know what is best for you. And Joe Jorgensen is going to let you lead your life. She's going to let you have your vices. She's going to let you start up your businesses. As long as you are not harming someone else, you are free to do what you want to do. And that really is the essence of our democracy. And that's why you should vote for Joe Jorgensen.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. So next, I'm going to go with you, Dev Steve. Why should people be supporting Donald Trump in 2020?
I can only say why I'm supporting them. I'm supporting them because I feel like the Democratic Party has failed the Black community. They failed to address the Black agenda. They failed in multiple things, and they always have the audacity to come back around 2 to 4 years. Like, hey, here I go. Let me pander to you a little bit more. Yeah, I consider myself conservative. I'm not the Candace Owens, Brent Tatum type of conservative. This is real Black conservative. I stand true on my principles. I believe in buying the block back like Nipsey Hussle. And one thing about Trump is he empowers us to do that. He understands what we're trying to do, what we're prideful about, and he understands how to do business. When you talk about Mike Tyson, Shaq, all these guys, and you hear what they have to say about this guy, the first thing they say is, good man, gave me a shot, did this, did that. Muhammad Ali, it's a line of greats that actually conducted business with the guy. So if I had to choose the list of these two people, I'm going to go with Trump every day over Democratic Party, just to show them they need to get their S together and stop treating us like we some token people every 2 to 4 years for a vote.
Okay, thank you very much, Dev Steve. Now I'll go with Bethany. Bethany, what is your final reason why people should be supporting Mark Charles in 2020? You're muted right now.
I thought I unmuted it. I guess not. In order for us to actually move forward, we need to understand our history and actually accept it. Because right now we do not, and we need to actually address it at a foundational level. You cannot build a house on sand. You cannot move forward unless your foundation is secure. We cannot continue doing the same things over and over and over. It has not helped us. So we need to give our country a chance to heal. We need people to come together and compromise and to have peace. For me, I absolutely stand by Mark Charles. I have gotten a sense of who he is. I think he would be an amazing leader, and he shows a lot of compassion. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. We need to ask ourselves, do we want to be a nation where we, the people, truly means all the people? And we need to make these things, and we need to decide that for ourselves now and not 4 years from now.
Okay, thank you so much, Bethany. Next, Kennedy, care to respond on why you believe Howie Hawkins is the best candidate for 2020?
Absolutely. As somebody who lives in a state where the Libertarian Party has full ballot access, recognition, and matching funds, I've seen the power of independent third parties when they have those tools. When we talk about the most pressing issues facing us right now, it is local governments leading the way on so many of them. Many people see the need for an independent left-wing party, and there's no reason the Green Party couldn't be that with some support. When you imagine voting for Howie Hawkins, imagine having a Green City Council member in the room when they're deciding what to do about police funding. Imagine Green school board members pushing back against bad COVID policies. Imagine a Green County commissioner getting that funding allocated to public transit in your neighborhood. This is the hope and the ability of the Howie Hawkins campaign, a campaign which is not just about building a movement for 2020, but giving the Green Party a new lease on life at a time when it is needed more than ever. We can do this, and with just that little bit of support, this could be a completely different conversation about what it means to have progressive politics in America.
Okay, thank you so much, Kennedy. And finally, Danny, would you like to make the final statement on why you believe people should vote for Joe Biden in 2020?
Sure. Freddie Gray, we talked about police reform earlier, but Freddie Gray was shot by the police because he was being mentally ill while black, and he was just minding his own business on the street near the scene of a crime, and he was shot and killed. And part of the problem is that people view it as like, oh, the problem started there. It's just a policing problem. It's just the racist cop. But if you look at this guy's entire life story, it was never going to turn out differently for him. He was born a heroin addict because his mother was addicted to heroin at the time of his conception. He was at a first grade reading level by the time he was in fifth grade. And he had a lifelong mental illness that he was never treated for, never even diagnosed with, and was never going to recover from because he was never going to get attention. And I really believe that, we do need structural change on so many of these levels. And that's why, I empathize so much with Kennedy's, arguments and Bethany's arguments and Michael's arguments that, we need to change the system and make it work better for the people. And that's why I'm I'm voting for Joe Biden, is that I think, frankly, Democrats have been the party that's making it possible for the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, for independents to actually get into government. And I really respect the hell out of Mark Charles and Howie Hawkins, and I really
I think you muted yourself.
Yeah, my bad. I think the Democratic Party is really the one to move us in that direction in 2020.
Okay, thank you so much, Danny. And I want to thank all of you for participating in today's debate, as well as all the people who were watching at home or wherever you are watching these live streams. Who knows? Live your life. But I want to take a quick moment to ask everyone here, if you enjoyed today's debate, please help share it so that all of these thoughts on these different candidates are being heard. Please make sure that you like it so we know that you actually enjoyed what this content is. Subscribe to the channel so that you all know that we are constantly doing new forms of content like this. We'll have more debates to come on Fridays. And furthermore, I want to just say thank you again for all of you for stepping up and actually having a civil and productive conversation. I think there is a lot of polarization in this country right now, and I think we need more conversations like this so that we can come to a common understanding. So I want to thank you all so much for doing that. Friends at home, I want to make sure that you guys are staying safe out there in these tumultuous times. I love you all for helping build up this movement. And as always, I hope you guys are staying rosy out there.